DL approach. For digital system design. The last class we looked at what is called as FSM, which is basically finite state machine, and that approach you can use in principle for any system, but if you look at that approach, basically the number of states is can be compared with the number of storage element, 1-bit storage element inside the system, inside the sequential circuit. So we considered few examples where like a sequence detector which has got say 4 different states, and you require at least 3 storage element to denote 2 storage element to denote 4 different state, S0 to S3, and so you require 2 flip-flops, and accordingly there are 4 states, and so there is a relationship between number of flip-flops that is required in the design and the number of states. So as the storage element number increases, proportionally the state diagram is going to get more and more complex. For example, if there are 4 storage element, your state diagram is going to have 16 different states, and if it is going to be say 8 storage element, then you need to draw say 2 raised to 8, that is 256 states, and drawing a state diagram which has got 256 state it's not practical. Okay, if it is like less than 10 or maybe up to 16, it's okay to do, but it is really inconvenient to draw yes. Please don't disturb the class in between. Okay. So the number of storage element that would be required increases in an exponential manner. The number of states increases in an exponential manner, so with respect to the number of storage element, okay, single bit storage element. So that is the first point that we are looking at. The number of storage elements decides the number of states in an FSM. Okay, by FSM I mean finite state machine. Number of storage elements decides the number of states in an FSM. For 8-bit storage, this number is like 256 total states. So as the number of states in the system increases largely, it becomes inconvenient to make use of the FSM approach which we have seen in the last class. Now on the other hand, why do we have to have this many number of states? Okay, so why not we design the digital system with a lesser number of states? And the answer is that if at all we are thinking about a synchronous design, so the digital system could be either synchronous or asynchronous. The digital system could be either asynchronous or it could be synchronous. These are two different versions. The design could be either of this type, asynchronous or synchronous. Now what do we mean by asynchronous? Asynchronous system is a system in which there is no control. Okay, in asynchronous system it is not controlled by a global or a system clock. Whereas on the other hand, synchronous system, if you look at every step is controlled by a universal or a global clock. It is the same clock that is going to control every part of this system. Now what is the advantage of usually we prefer synchronous design. The reason that we prefer, there are multiple reasons, because some of the actions have to take place in a controlled manner, otherwise we can't ensure the proper operation of the circuit. For example, depending upon the transitions, the delay for high to low transition and low to high transition, these are varying from for a particular gate to another gate. So it's not same for all the gates. So every gate which is fabricated ultimately have some propagation delays. So there are various delays in the system. So let me just talk about various delays in the system. If you consider, for example, a flip-flop itself or any gate itself, this we have seen in the case of a in digital circuits, we have seen these delays. So suppose there is an input which varies like this, so and the output of any block in response to this input. So for example, if this is A and then this is A bar, and A bar is supposed to be 0 when A is 1. This is an inverter, and at this particular time you have a variation of A from 1 to 0, and therefore the A bar has to respond to this, but it takes some finite time to respond to this, and so it will take some time to respond to this, and then it continues to 1. So the 50% point is reached. After the 50% point of the input, it takes a finite time for the 50% of the output to change to the appropriate state. So this is a delay, and this delay, since the output is changing from 0 to 1, we call it as the propagation delay when it changes from low to high. We are looking at the output of the circuit. So output of the circuit is going from low to high, so we call it as TPLH, propagation delay for going from output going from low to high. Input is going from high to low, but we are talking in reference to the output. Okay, so this is with the case of an inverter. For a D flip-flop, it may be something else. So every component you can talk about these delays, and it may be different for different circuit because the number of gates inside may be different, and different gates also have different kinds of delay. And similar thing happens here also. It may take a larger delay, for example, for this the opposite transition to happen. So this is TPHL. Okay, so output is going from high to low, so therefore this is TPHL. And so it depends on the technology, depends upon the gate, depends upon the components. These values of this, usually they are in nanoseconds or even sometimes picoseconds for faster digital circuits. It depends upon whether you are doing a TTL circuit or a CMOS circuit, so this delay will vary. So but they need not be equal. So we can always design a particular component such that these delays are more or less equal, but in general they could be different. Now what are the other delays which are important? So let us talk about the other delays also. So this is propagation delay. So this is showing the propagation delay. Now what are the other delays? When you talk about the D flip-flop, so it has got a D input, Q output, and then you have a clock, and suppose I show a input waveform and the clock waveform. Clock waveform is something which continuously goes up and down. It will stay in 0 for a time and then goes to high, and then this keep on repeats. Okay, and the duration for which it remains in the low state and the high state, that duration is called the time period. Okay, so this is with respect to time. All these waveforms are with respect to time. So this is our clock. Now let me show you the D input, and here I have shown a positive edge. So these are the active edge. So let me say okay, so this is our D input. So this is how the D input varies. It stays at 1, and then it stays at 0, etc. Now the output, which is Q here, if you look at we know the operation of D flip-flop. All that it does is basically during the active edge of the clock, suppose if the output is 0 and the input is 1, and during the active edge of the clock it will be changing to 1. As we have seen, it will not change immediately, it takes some time to change. So there will be a propagation delay here also, and then it remains, and then it looks for the next clock to come, and at the next clock, whatever is the D input, it is 0 now, and therefore it has to go to 0 with a propagation delay. So this is what the D flip-flop do. Just like the inverter, this will have a again you can take it with 50% or with 90%. So this is your TP LH, and this is your TPHL. Okay, so same thing continues, and again you have to wait for the next active edge of the clock, and if the input is high, then the output goes again to high. So the output follows the input, but only during the active edge of the clock. So if it is active edge is positive edge, it will happen like this. If it is negative edge, then the opposite transition, these things will happen. Okay, so now so the other timings I want to bring in. So other than TPLH and TPHL, you will have other factors which influence, for example, the operation of a flip-flop, and that is setup time and so propagation delay 1, and then we will talk about setup time, and number 3 we have what is called as hold time. Okay, so what is setup time? Now setup time is a time which is required for input to be set up before the active edge of the clock, so that it would be in this case D flip-flop will change the output to that input, required input. So for example, if you look at here, the value of the input D is changed a little bit early, this much early before the active edge of the clock has come in. Okay, and therefore when the active edge of the clock came, this change was reflected at the output. It has gone to the output. But suppose instead of bringing in the input here, but suppose I bring it just before the clock, I did not set it up early enough, and then there is a chance that my output will not catch up. It will remain low because the input was not brought in early enough, and therefore it could not be latched to the output during the active edge of the clock. So we are looking with respect to the active edge of the clock how early at least we need to bring the input and make it available at the input of the flip-flop so that it could be latched to the output of the D flip-flop. Okay, so there is a time that we specify, and that minimum time is called setup time. So this is TP and this is TSU. Okay, so I'll repeat, as setup time is the amount of time prior to the active edge of the clock we need to set up the input so that it would be latched to the output of the D flip-flop. In this case, that's what setup time means. So whether it is 0 or 1, we need to make that input available at the D input of the flip-flop prior to the active edge. There is a amount of time. If we don't bring early enough, say if it is coming just like the orange waveform that I have shown, then the output is not latched to the high state because it just came and the clock also came. There was not enough time for it to be brought to the output. So that is setup time. Now what is hold time? Now hold time is after the clock edge, how long we need to keep the input staying there. Okay, so here for example the first transition, as you see, you can see that the output stayed for a very long time the input stayed, the D input stayed for a very long time, almost half the cycle after the clock edge has come. But what will happen, suppose if the D input is not staying long enough, but immediately it goes away, it changes. So then again the output will not be latched to high, it would continue in low. Okay, so both of this, so if my waveforms was like this, D input waveform is like this, then my output is going to remain in low without any change. Okay, the reason why it did not work here is because we immediately changed the output, we immediately changed the D input just after the clock is gone, or the active edge of the clock is gone. We immediately change the output. There should be a minimum time we need to maintain. Okay, so if that minimum time, for example this is that minimum time, then if we maintain that input beyond that time, then it will definitely be latched to the output. Okay, so that time is what we refer to as the hold time. Okay, so TH for hold time, TP for propagation time, TSU for the setup time. I hope that is clear. So every flip-flop, every element has this type of timing requirement, and if we want to ensure that all this, considering all this delays and setup and hold times, if it has to work properly, we need to give the breathing space for the components to work properly. If it is not controlled properly, if it is not driven properly, then what we get at the output is not what we require. So in order to ensure all of this, we can have a global clock which is controlling all the changes which are taking place in the system. So that is one aspect. The connected to this, we can also talk about what is the maximum frequency with which the clock can be operated. Given these timings are these, the values of this time, like TPLH and TPLH. Sometimes TPLH may be larger than TPHL, sometimes TPHL is larger than TPLH. So we usually talk about TP min and TP max. Okay, so depending upon whether TPLH is bigger or smaller. So in this particular case, the way I have drawn, TPLH is smaller, so that is TP min, and TPHL is TP max. Okay, so which is maximum of the two. Okay, so if these timings are given to us, then how do we decide the clock frequency, or what is the maximum frequency with which we can operate, so that we can ensure all these conditions are met and the transitions are happening according to the way that we require. So so if you look at even this D flip-flop to function properly, what is this, what should be the maximum frequency that we can give? So definitely we can talk about in time period. So time period should be sufficiently long. So a simple approximation, if you look at that, there should be a hold time after the clock, there should be a sufficiently long time, and then and the input should also come early enough. Okay, so there should be a setup time here. Okay, so this is the setup time. Okay, I have drawn it here, but you can draw it here also with respect to this transition. The input should be held high long before. So the clock should have a frequency which is lower than, or the time period could be larger than the sum of these two. Okay, this is setup time and hold time. So the sum of these two, it should be the frequency. So in this particular flip-flops, D flip-flop, the T should be greater than T setup plus T hold. Otherwise, this is going to run into error. Okay, so we need to bring the D input and maintain it, and after a time period only the clock can come. So the first activates comes, and after the one activates come, then we need to accommodate these two times, some of these two times before the next activates can come. So there should be a time for which the output should be allowed to kept even after the clock edge is gone, that is hold time. And then suppose the next edge is coming and we need to maintain that at least for another setup time. So the frequency cannot be more than 1 by this TSU plus TH. So T should be greater than this. Okay, so and another thing is that we should also consider the delay for this output to change after the input is given. Suppose this output is given to the next stage, then this output is actually taking place after a TP delay. So, and then after obtaining this output after a delay, then we need to give the setup, we need to keep it for a setup time and also keep it for a hold time. So considering that, we need to add the maximum. Okay, so sometimes it is smaller than the other, so we need to look at the maximum value. Okay, so these are the three important time we need to keep in mind. So the setup time, the hold time, the propagation delay if you are connecting multiple blocks. So these time should be the time period of the clock should be larger than the sum of all these times. Okay, now you are not just using one kind of element, and therefore you you need to take into account of what are the other components and the delays introduced by the combinational circuit. For example, the output of the combinational circuit, yesterday we have seen in Mealy and Moore machine, we are basically taking the state input back into the combinational circuit input, and then it passes through the combinational circuit, and then only it is available at the input of the D flip-flop. So if there are combinational circuit which are connected to the state variables, okay, the input of the combinational circuit is taken from these output of the flip-flop, and then the combination circuit will be having many number of gates or multiplexer, like what we have seen yesterday, and then it will also have some propagation delay. So and when it passes through all this propagation delay, and only then it will be available for the input D. So the amount of delay that it has to go through, that should also be added to the condition. So T, so in the presence of combinational circuit, in the presence of combinational circuit, the clock period should be sufficiently large to accommodate the delays introduced by it. Okay, so the clock period, so the delay introduced by the combinational circuit, let's say it is T comp. Okay, so that is the delay introduced by the combinational circuit. So we can write so therefore the T should be greater than, so we need a T setup, then we require the delay of the flip-flop, which is or TP, then so TP is referring to the delay of the flip-flop. Okay, so this is only the delay of flip-flop, and I am going to take the max of this, and then plus T, okay, so I should rather write maximum of T comp. Okay, so there may be lots of gates. The maximum delay of the combinational circuit, then plus to be on the safe side, we can add T hold. Okay, so if the combination circuit delay is sufficiently large, then the changes will happen in the combinational circuit, and only then the input will be changed, and that change happens if it is more than the hold time. We don't need to add this hold time. But suppose this combinational circuit is acting very fast and its input is changed very quickly, and therefore to avoid any risk, we can add the hold time also to be on the safe side. Okay, so this hold time addition here is it depends upon how much is the combinational circuit, okay, delay. So so therefore we can write in a slightly different way. We can take the maximum of these two. Okay, so you take the maximum of this. So hold time is what? After the output is changed, or after the active edge of the clock, the input should be continually maintained for some more time. it should not be immediately changed. So that is hold time. But that change at the input will happen, that depends upon the basically the delay in the path from output to the input. Okay, so that is determined by the combinational circuit. So if the combinational circuit introduces a larger delay, then definitely the input is not going to change before that, and therefore we don't need to add the hold time explicitly. It will be already taken care of. So this is the time period. So the time period should be greater than this. The minimum should be like this, and therefore the maximum of the clock frequency will be 1 by t minimum. Okay, so if you just add all of this quantity, equate it to t, that is t minimum, the lower limit, and inverse of that will give you the maximum frequency. So the operating frequency should be less than f max. Okay, so then we can ensure that things will happen without any improper working. Okay, so we are talking about asynchronous and synchronous. I am not sure whether I will be able to get into the RTL design today. So one advantage, I said, if there is a global clock, we will be able to control all the operation by using that clock, by operating that clock in a sufficiently low frequency. Even then we are able to achieve these days this operating frequency in gigahertz. So that means our setup and hold time and propagation delay, all this are lesser than nanoseconds. Some of all of that is lesser than nanoseconds. So that depends upon the technology, how we make these devices ultimately in the chip. Okay, another advantage another advantage of synchronous circuit is that it can increase what is called as throughput. Okay, I'll explain what it means. It can increase throughput by utilizing the concept of pipeline. Probably you are aware of what is pipelining. So in order to explain this, let's take some circuits. So say we have a lot of combinational circuit here. So each of this block corresponds to some combinational circuit, and there is input, and then goes like this. Okay, so these are some combination circuits. Suppose I am not using any clock, the amount of delay or amount of time I need to wait for my correct output to reach me at the output. So this is my output and this is my input. Okay, there could be many more stages in order to exemplify the effect that I'm going to talk about. So this is my output. So this is stage 1, stage 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. Okay, so each of this step will introduce some delay, T1, T2 here, T3 here, T4 here, T5 here, T6 here. So after giving some input, I need to wait at least the sum of all these delays in order to make sure that my output that has come asynchronously at the output is going to be the correct output. Okay, so for ensuring the correctness of the output, I need to wait at least a time period which is sum of all this propagation delays. So all these are propagation delays of the individual blocks, and we need, after giving an input, we need to wait that much amount of time in order to ensure that final output is correct or not. And only after waiting that much amount of time, I can give the next input. I cannot give before that, because that will interfere with my earlier input, and the output is then going to be uncertain. Okay, so we, in order to ensure, we need to so the latency, so we can define a term called the latency of the above circuit is T1 plus T2 up to, so in this case I have drawn 6 different stages. So depending upon the number of stages from input to the output, you need to wait that much long time in order to get it. So suppose that say T1, let me assign some time. So this is like say 1 nanosecond, this is also 1 nanosecond, say this is 2 nanosecond, and then 1 nanosecond, 2 nanosecond, 2 nanosecond, etc. Okay, so if this is how the timings are, then I just need to add up all this. So 4, then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is going to be 9 nanosecond. Okay. Okay, so we need to wait for 9 nanosecond for the output to be, made sure that it is what is expected. Okay, now going back to the synchronous circuit, if we try to make this work in a synchronous fashion, so what we do is basically, I will not draw again, but we will introduce say flip-flops here. Here there is another flip-flop, here there is another flip-flop. Okay, so I am introducing flip-flops in between different stages. So if I introduce flip-flops between these stages, what I can do is that I can latch this with the help of a clock. So there will be a clock, I can control it synchronously. Okay, now depending upon the number of bits, I need to have the length of the register. So these are basically registers. Flip-flops can only store 1 bit, but if you want more number of bits, these are registers. So we will introduce registers. So we are coming into RTL. Why we make use of registers? So the registers say R1, R2 and R3. So they are controlled by a global clock. And now what is the advantage? The advantage is that say here 1 plus 1, 2, after 2 nanosecond the input becomes available, and then I can latch, using the activity of the clock, I can latch it, latch that output of this first 2 block. This output of these two will be available after 2 nanosecond after the input is given, so I can latch it. So if I operate my clock with t equal to say to be on the safe side, let me give 2.5 nanosecond. I operate the clock at 2.5 nanosecond, and therefore definitely all the timing criteria for completing the first 2 blocks operation will be met, and also maybe the setup and hold time, all those things can be also met, and even there is a propagation delay. Say suppose everything is or even to be on the safe side, we can even give say 3 nanosecond. Okay, so I operate this at a period, frequency is 1 by t, but time period of the clock is 3 nanosecond, and it will be latched here. And then Similarly here also, okay, so here if you look at this require 2 plus 1, so okay, so I need to increase in order to ensure that it to be 4 nanosecond. Okay, so I operate, since the same clock is given, I should look not only on the first part, the second part, as well as the third part. The other parts are only 2 nanoseconds, but the major delay is between R1 and R2, and that is around 2 plus 1, that is 3 nanosecond. And introducing the delays introduced by the flip-flop, I am adding a 1 additional nanosecond, so I am operating the clock at 4 nanosecond. Okay, so there could be raised states here also to latch the output and also the input also. So all of this are going to be operated with the same clock, which is running at 4 nanosecond. Now, okay, so if you look carefully, the latency, that means after an input is given, if the output has to come or available at the final stage, so the new latency, that means the latency with the synchronous components inserted into the circuit is basically what, so from input, if you look at, so I don't need to count the first register from that is available to us, but 1 2 3 4 registers, and the output will be requiring 4 nanosecond to go from one register to the other. So 4 into 4 will be 16 nanosecond. Okay, so we may say that that is like bad. I mean, we had a better speedy operation earlier, which was only 9 nanosecond, but now after introducing the flip-flop and operating the flip-flop using a clock which is with a period t equal to 4 nanosecond, we are getting 16 nanosecond delay from input to the output. That's not good. But the fact is that that's not the end. So that's where the pipeline comes. So pipeline can be now introduced. So after we give an input here, okay, this input in the first register can be changed after the output of the first block. Okay, so I'm going to call this as the first block, and this is the second, third and fourth. Okay, so after the first block result is computed, and then the next active clock edge comes, it will be latched on to resistor R1, and now I can change my input here. I can change my input to the new set of input, and that will not affect the computation which is already performed in the combinational circuit in the block number 1, that is available at the register R1 output, which is feeding the input to second block, and after the computation is done there, so it will be latched on to the register R2, and similarly this gets continued. So the ability to change, what we have achieved is that the speed with which we can change the input is now increased, because it is not going to violate the final output. Okay, because of the flip-flops or the registers that are latching the partial outputs, they will not be affected by the change in the input. Okay, that is what we refer by throughput. So how much time is required, or what is the rate at which I can change the input? So if you look at so the throughput, so T throughput, the time corresponding to the throughput is basically the clock period, which is only 4 nanosecond. Okay, so if you compare 9 nanosecond with 4 nanosecond, it is definitely an improvement. Okay, but if you consider the latency, it is taking 60 nanosecond, but because of the pipelining, so if you consider the process, so we are giving, say, first at some time t, we are giving some input, and then after one clock cycle we give the new input, and then after one more clock cycle we give the third input and fourth input. Okay, so 4 input will be given by the time the first the output corresponding to the first output comes here. Already fourth input is now given, but that is not possible in the first scenario. In the first scenario we need to wait for 9 nanosecond. Only after that we can give the next input, and then we have to wait for another 9 nanosecond to give the second input. So then only, because it adds up, all the delays will be added up. But if you are controlling with a clock, and if you insert registers in between, then we will be able to increase the throughput, because the final speed does not depend upon latency, it depends upon the throughput. Okay, so latency is just the cumulative propagation delay from input to the output, but throughput is the speed with which the data is getting processed. So what is important is the throughput compared to the latency. So this is how all the supercomputers are made. So supercomputers have architectures which involve lots of register kind of blocks in between, and everything is getting pipelined. So when one operation, the first so for example, say some addition is happening here. So let's say that we need to add 2 numbers, and after that we need to multiply the partial result. So we do the addition here, then we get some partial result, and that is getting multiplied here. Okay, so let's look at something like that. So let's consider an example. So the operation that we want to do is like f of a, b, say, and c. So that is like, first you need to add a plus b, and then you need to multiply with c. Okay, so this will take place in 2 steps. First of all, we need to add. So let's see that the block 1 is performing that. So this is done in block 1. After that, the result that we get, so let's say the partial result, I will call it as say d, and that will be multiplied. So this result is d, and that will be multiplied. So this is done in block 2. So we have an operation to be performed. So block 1 will perform, that is, this block will perform the addition, and the result that we get d will be multiplying with c, that will be performed in the second block. So if it is pipelined, what is going to happen is that so after one computation is done, we will change the input, and then we have to repeat the computation. Okay, that's what we do in a for loop or such kind of programming construct. We repeat the same thing again and again with different kinds of inputs. Okay, so if that is what we are doing here, then we gave the first number a1, b1, c1, and first block will perform a1 plus b1. Okay, and the second block is now doing nothing. It is just sitting idle because it has not got d into it. So it is waiting for d, and then after the first block computes a1 plus b1, so d1 will be available. So d1 into c1 will be done here. So when d1 into c1 is done in the second block, in the first block I can do a2 plus b2. Okay, so a2 plus b2 in the first block will be done at the same time when d1 into c1 is calculated in the second block. Okay, this is the essence of pipelining. Okay, so we have an operation, a process to be performed which has multiple steps in it. So we divide it into block by block, and only if the first thing is calculated, the second thing can be done. So by the time the second block is performing the second part of the calculation, the first part of the second input will be calculated in the first block. So this thing, if more number of steps are involved in the computing process, usually that is the case. So you can break down it into different steps in the process, and then you can pipeline. So let me just show here. So if I say, so P1, so this is the time axis. So after some clock period T, then P2 will be done, then another clock, so this is 2T, then P3, the third process, so this is like 3T, then at 4T, so you have the fourth process done. Okay, so these are all computed on the first input. Okay, so I will denote the first input here, and then in the same time when P2 is being done, I will have P1 happening at the same time for this with the second input, and when P3 is going on, I will do my P2 on the second input, and then P3 on the second input, and then I need one more clock for so this is T, 2T, 3T, 4T, 5T. So this is my P4 for the second input, and then this continues on. Okay, so then I can have my P1 on the third input going on, and P2 on the third input here, and P3 on the third input here, and then P4, the final step, on the third input here. Okay, so this is 2T, 3T, 4T, 5T, etc. So this way, if you look at if you consider a particular time between 3T and 4T, in the first block is performing okay, so the computation that is performed when the first during the same time, you can see that different blocks are performing different process steps. Okay, so initially only P1 is performing, and so in the second period, if you look at P1 and P2, okay, P1 on the second input and P2 on the first input is performed at the same time. So vertically they are the same time, and similarly here also, when P1 is performed on the third input, P2 is performed on, P2 is a process, sub part of the entire process, so that is performed on the second input, and P3 is performing the operation of the first input. Okay, so similarly I can add one more. So here my P1 on the fourth input, okay, and it continues. So if I look at this time, this is a particular time. So P1 means it is in the first block is performing acting upon the fourth input. Okay, so this block is going to operate upon the fourth input. So here what is going on is the computation on the third input. Here the computation will be going on for the second input, and here the computation will be going on the first input. Okay, the fourth step or the fourth process of the first input is going on here. The third process or step on the second input is going on here, and the second process on the third input is going on here. So all are happening at once, and this is possible because of the synchronization that we achieved through this. So thus the throughput is only very small. It's only 4 nanosecond. You can change the input after every 4 nanosecond. Earlier throughput is 9 nanosecond, at least 9 nanosecond. Okay, we need to wait for 9 nanosecond, After everything is ensured, then only we can change the input. So this is the the most important advantage of using synchronous circuit. So I will stop here. So I only did one thing essentially with respect to the RTL approach, is the usage of register to to improve the speed or the throughput of the data processing in the digital circuit. And second thing is that the moment registers are introduced, what it is going to result in is increasing the number of states, which I started at the very beginning to talk about. So 8-bit means there will be 256 states. So if one register with 8-bit is there, means there is 256 states. And similarly, if you have multiple registers, say 8 plus 8 16, then 2 raised to 16 states. And if that many number of states are there in a circuit, then drawing state diagrams or the finite state machine design which we did last time is impossible to be done. So definitely we need to think about some other approach to design systems which has large number of storage elements like registers at various points in the circuit. So major architectures like processors are done by using RTL approach, because RTL approach can handle that many number of states in a different way. Okay, so I'll stop here.